me make sure. I think now you should see my presentation, right?
Yes, you see it right now. Thank
Yeah.
you, sir. On God's will, on 8 o'clock, we will begin.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome, man. Yeah. I think now we can start, right?
If we can wait like 1 minute, doctor, and we should
Okay,
begin.
sure. We can wait 2 minutes, 1 minute until more people are
once they begin, I will welcome the audience, and I welcome you, and we shall begin.
Sure. Go ahead.
Like in 1 minute, and we will begin.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Hello, good evening, and welcome our honorable attendants. My name is Ali Ammar. I am a chemical engineering and petroleum refining student at Basra University for oil and gas. I will be the moderator for this session today, hosted and organized by BUOG IKE Student Chapter American Installation for Chemical Engineer, entitled Effective Technology Writing, Reports and Papers for Researchers and Engineers, presented by Dr. Khosrow Jarahan, which has an extensive experience in both research and industry. His background includes executive researcher at Petronas Research and Technology Center, research associate at Hurwitz-White University, former formation damage specialist at Bremer Corex Company, author of more than 20 peer-reviewed publications with multiple international conference presentations. And before we actually begin the session, we have to note that please make sure to mute your microphone and turn off your cameras. If you have any question, you can write in the chat box, and later at the end of the session, Dr. Khosrow will answer it. And we want to note that there will be a certificate of attendance will provide by IKE will be provided by IKE chapter, and the link will be shared at the end of the session. رجاء حافظوا على ركزوا على اغلاق مايكاتكم وكاميراتكم لتسير المحاضره بشكل صحيح. اذا كانت لديكم اي اسئله تقدرون تكتبونها بالشات بوكس، والاستاذ راح يجاوب عليها في نهايه المحاضره. وايضا راح تكون هناك شهاده حضور مقدمه من BUOG IKE Student Chapter، والرابط راح يرسل في نهايه المحاضره. Welcome, Dr. Khosrow. You may begin.
Yes. Thanks very much, Ali. Very much appreciated for the nice and comprehensive introduction. So I am Khosrow Jarrahian. I got PhD in petroleum engineering based in Edinburgh, Heriot-Watt University in Scotland, United Kingdom. So I have done my PhD in petroleum engineering in production chemistry. So I looked at it, the interaction, the geochemical interaction between different chemistries, particularly scale inhibitors and the carbonate reservoirs. And before joining Heriot-Watt University, I used to work in Research Institute of Petroleum Industry based in Tehran, Iran. So for your information, I am originally from Iran. I'm from Northwest, very close to your border. So I am my ethnicity is Kurdish, so I am a Kurd from Iran. So I'm very, very happy to have you all today in the session. And inshallah, we will have a good session, very interactive and very engaging session. So let's start with what I'm going to talk about. So as I mentioned before in the advertisement, so I am going to talk about how to write down reports and papers, particularly research reports or technical reports and technical and research papers for new researchers and engineers. So these slides have been prepared based on my experience in the academia and industry. Hopefully, it helps you in the future. And if you are doing a master, hopefully it directs your research to the way that you can convert the research into the journal or peer review journal papers. So let's see what makes a paper good. What's the criteria that we can call a paper a good paper? So first of all, these papers should have a concise title. What does it mean? It means that so we can have a general title that, okay, I can give you an example later on, and I have brought some examples of recent publications, recent manuscript that I have submitted in Energy and Fuel Journal by the American Chemical Society publisher. So we can have a general title, but generally speaking, general title, as long as it reflects the whole text of the paper, it is okay. However, if it doesn't tell you what's going on in the body text of paper, it needs to be, rewritten, to be rephrased. So title is important because, first of all, it gives the readers a general understanding, a general background, what's inside of the paper. And this is very important because if the title is not attractive, it's not appealing, people, unfortunately, particularly nowadays, because of the technology advancement, particularly in AI, artificial intelligence, are not very attractive to read your paper. But as an academic researcher and also as an industrial researcher, you need to get high citation, a lot of citation as much as possible. So in this case, the title should be short. At the same time, the title should show what's inside of the body text of the paper. This is very, very important. And as I mentioned, I'm going to show you what's the relation between the title with the rest part of the paper. So standard outline. Every journal has their standard outlines. For instance, Energy and Fuels is in American Chemical Society. So if you go to the website of the journal, there is a one place called guidance for authors. So if you click on that, there is a guidance in terms of the paper, how to write the paper. For instance, one journal has a specific font size, a specific font for the whole of body, and also some journals don't like to submit figures, tables, or supplementary information just in one consolidated file. So they will ask you to separate and submit tables, figures, supplementary information separately. So you have to make sure that this paper, this manuscript that you submitted in the journal meet these standard requirements. And then the coherent writing style, like story, like novel, you should have a narrative or narrative way of telling a story. Okay, for instance, if you tell a story, you start from one point, and then if you are a good storyteller, you can attract people with having a coherence or the flow or the story inside of the paper. Here we have exactly the same thing. So if you, for instance, generate a very good data, but there is not a coherency or flow and story inside of the paper, I can say, I'm afraid this paper is not going to be published. So, and it's not going to be called a good paper. I can tell you one example. So during my PhD, I generated a lot of data in the lab. As I mentioned before, it was about the geochemical interaction between scale inhibitor with the rock. And like other, experimental work, I generated a lot of work. And then I put all together, okay? But when I read it, I couldn't find the coherency between, for instance, introduction, the paragraphs inside of introduction, the results and discussion. And when I sent it to my former PhD supervisor to go through it and review it, he told me, Khosrow, this is not in the format of the journal paper. And he gave me some idea how to write down the paper in a way that the paper has a coherency and flow. For instance, you have to be very careful in terms of using transition words, like in addition, moreover. They are in English called transition words or transition expression. You have to use that. You should have just, for instance, the first sentence of the paragraph should tell a story, what's inside of this paragraph. And then you can extend it based on the result, based on the findings that you have, based on the first sentence of the paragraph. This is called coherent writing style. So how we can improve this coherent writing style? You have to write down as much as possible. For instance, I don't know how much you are familiar to English proficiency tests like IELTS or TOEFL. There is one skill which is called writing, and these skills must be assessed by the examiner. So you have to write down an essay in Shah. So in essay, you should have the first sentence, which tells you the whole story, and then you can have some, findings or some. You have to extend this first sentence. For instance, I can give you just one short example. We can say smoking is bad for our health. Okay, this is one sentence. and it is clear for everyone. But if we want to extend it, we can say, okay, smoking is bad for heart because of that. Smoking is also very harmful for our environment because of increasing the footprint and CO2 into our environment. And at the end, at the end of paragraph, you should have a conclusion of what you have mentioned in the body text of the paragraph. So this is the way of you can try and practice it to fulfill, to meet the requirement that you need to write down a paper, a good paper, coherently. And then references. So in every paper, research paper, you claim something. For instance, you have gone to the lab, run the experiment, and got the results. And when you interpret the results, there is some findings in your mind, but you need a reference to confirm that, okay, this is my claim. For instance, if temperature goes up, the absorption of scale inhibitor is also going up. Okay, this is one claim, one iddia. So for that, to prove this claim or iddia, you need a reference manba. And most of the time, particularly in the case of you have to refer this claim to solid work. What solid work means? Other researchers have already published their work in this context. For instance, I can say increasing the temperature causes increasing absorption of scale inhibitor. Khosrow Jarrahian already seen that in the lab. You can reference to my paper. And Ali already done this and got this conclusion. You can refer these findings to solid work. I would suggest you to use published peer-reviewed journal papers as a solid work if you want to approve or to prove this claim, as well as PhD theses, master theses. Don't refer to websites. For instance, referring to, I have seen that, I have come across already, because I have reviewed some papers from researchers that they had referred to Wikipedia. But Wikipedia is not a solid reference that you can refer to that. You have to refer to famous researcher works, to the works done by famous researchers, done by, PhD students, master students after that. And then you can have a good, solidified references in this case. And then the last one is state significant new information. What is the novelty of your work? Okay, everyone can go to the work, go to the lab, or run any simulation. So you have to clearly mention, particularly in the last sentence of introduction, that the aim of this work is blah, 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 blah. So the aim of this work means that you are clearly mentioning the novelty of this work. You cannot publish good paper in peer-reviewed journals without having the novelty. A lot of people can say, okay, I have already done that, but what's the novelty of your work? For instance, in my case, one of the novelty of my work was nobody before me had done any work on scale inhibitor interaction with calcite and dolomite. Most of people already done on interaction of scale inhibitor with sandstone reservoirs. This is one just simple and small example of novelty, clearly mentioning the novelty of the work. So, and now, after that, we need to think about the writing a good abstract. So the abstract should be, again, concise, go to the point, and summary of the paper topic. So for abstract, I can show you one example of my work. You can, for instance, say, okay, scale formation, inorganic scale formation is very bad in oil industry and causes formation damage, clogging, blah, 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 blah. This is just one or two maximum sentences about the importance of this work. And then you can say, in this work, we have done that, and we concluded that. For instance, in my case, we run the experimental result, static experimental, on different scale inhibitors, methylphosphonate scale inhibitors, polymeric scale inhibitors with calcite and dolomite.
Doctor, interrupting you. Did you change the slides, or are you still on the same one, on the first one?
No, I have changed it. You cannot see it?
No, we can't.
Oh, really? Oh, this is very strange.
Yep, now we can.
You can, okay.
Yep.
So please let me know, Ali, if you cannot see the next slide, okay?
Okay.
Thanks very much. Let me. So, yeah, I was saying that, and after that, you're saying that you have done this experiment or this modeling and you got the results. You don't need to go in details. For instance, you have seen or you have observed these experimental results in the lab because of that. No, just clearly mention that you did this test and you got these for instance results very, very clearly. Don't talk about cause of these results. Just whatever you observed in the lab, either by running physically the experiment or running the simulation or the simulator, just mention in the abstract and leave it. Because when readers read these, go through the abstract, it can, by first sentence, detect what's the topic of this paper is and what you have done, particularly in this case, okay? And then it says it should be usually around 350 words, yes. However, different journals have various standards for the words limitation in abstract. For instance, in SPE journal, they say maximum 400 words in the abstract. In American Chemical Society publisher, ACS, like Energy and Fuels, Crystal Growth, or those, kind of journals, there is 250 words as a word limit for the journal. You have to double check through the guidance template for the authors, as mentioned in the previous slide. So its purpose to explain what makes your paper valuable and unique. Yes. So this is the novelty of your work, but don't elaborate it, don't extend it. Just mention in one sentence. Include significant and new information, as I told you. Don't go in details in terms of giving them the reason of observing these findings in the lab or these findings from software, and state your conclusions. That's it. So now you can claim that this abstract is good. Let's review it. So one or maximum two sentences. What's the topic? What's the paper is about? And then what you have done either in the lab or by software simulation, and then what you have observed. And then you can, at the end up or wrap up the abstract by saying, this is the importance of this work, which can help production chemists to design scale inhibitor squeeze treatment effectively and efficiently, or this is a good way for chemical engineers to model one process, let's say, separator design, in a way that the separators can work effectively and efficiently. Okay, I hope it does make sense to you guys. So I have changed the slides. Can you see it?
No, sir, we can't.
Okay, let's. I think I have to.
Yes, now we can.
Yeah. I don't know what happened. So a good paper starts with a good plan. What does it mean? So you have generated a lot of data, but you don't know where and when you can start from. For instance, it's like you have a ground or a field and you want to build up your own property, your own house in it. So you cannot start without thinking about which part should be bathroom, which part should be bedroom, which part should be living room, which part would be, back garden and kitchen. You need to have a plan. So this plan, in writing a paper, this is my personal experience to you. I always put the results in the PowerPoint slides in a way that there is a flow. For instance, this is the experimental methodology, right? And this is the results, the adsorption results, pH measurement results, and then analytical results by scanning electron microscopy, adsorption, isotherms, or these kind of things, and then conclusion. So when you put these results in the slides, you can see the structure of your paper in your brain. And then you can see, okay, I can start from that, and then put these results here. And I am going to mention later on that you can put the results there and then think about, okay, is there any flow? If I go from slide 2 to slide 3, can I see there is a relation or irtibat between them? What's the relation between them? Is there any flow? Is there any story about it or not? So this is a way that you can double check that the paper or the plan makes sense to you. Okay? I'm going out again, and I think now you can see my new slides. Okay? Is that correct?
Yes, doctor, we can.
So, as I told you, sorry for my inconvenience, Ali, but I would appreciate if you could confirm with me like before that when I change the slides. A good paper starts with a good plan. Yeah, it is very obvious, as I told you. You cannot put everything in your paper. You have to put outstanding results in your paper, new and novel results in your paper. You can generate a lot of data in the lab. You can generate a lot of data through simulation. But which one seems new, novel, and outstanding for readers? Because at the end of the day, as I mentioned before at the first slide, you should have a novelty and clearly mention this novelty in the paper. Otherwise, you can find, for instance, a lot of paper about adsorption measurement. You can find a lot of and many papers, junk papers or good papers in, let's say, in transport phenomena or in CFD simulation, or, a lot of matters. But one thing that makes the paper as well-shaped, well-written is novelty and how you present these results in the paper. So relate the paper to the scope of meeting or journal. So you cannot publish, for instance, chemical engineering topic or paper in, let's say, electrical engineering, unless there is a relation between them. For instance, as a chemical engineer, you can do a research on process control, different types of tools that you can control the process. So you have done research in this. So as far as I remember, because I haven't done control process for a long time ago, as far as I remember, you can have some electrical instruments to control the process, to control debit, to control the flow rate, to control the velocity, to control, these kind of things which is related to process engineering. So you can do research on how to optimize the efficiency of, let's say, flow meter in the distillation tower, okay? If you do research on this, yes, obviously, you can touch a little bit about the electrical, yes, engineering reason behind this research, and then go to the chemical engineering. So this work is like a multidisciplinary work. So you can either publish in chemical engineering or applied electrical engineering, which is already published, papers on chemical engineering process control. So how you can find the scope of SPE meeting or journal, there is, if you go to the website of the journal and click on that, so and there are two columns. One column is for editorial board. You can find editorial editors of the journals, and one part is scope of the journal. So you can check the scope of journal and then make sure that the scope of your paper is aligned with the scope of this journal. This is just one quick and simple way of checking, double checking the scope of your paper with the scope of journal. And explain some sort of methodology. Yes, for instance, in the experimental paper, what you have done, which method you have used, because this paper is going to be used for other researchers in the future, and you have to make sure that the methodology, either experimental methodology, theoretical methodology, or modeling methodology, have been clearly mentioned in the paper. I can give you one example. I read one paper when I was doing master in Iran, and so the whole of paper was very nice because it was novel and it was very well written, and there was a flow and coherency inside of the paper. But they didn't clearly mention what is the methodology of this experiment, which method that they used. Did they use, for instance, dynamic method or static method? They just mentioned they measured just one parameter. So you have to, and I'm going to show you later on my paper, that in this work, I have used static bottle test, and this is the materials that I used. Different scale inhibitors, which has been provided by this company, company X, company Y, company Z, and then this is the matrix of the brine that I used for making up the scale inhibitor solution: seawater, formation brine, distilled water, 1% NaCl or whatever. And then these, for instance, brines, if you use a formation brine or seawater, you have to put the composition of the brine there. Because as I mentioned a few seconds ago, you have to clearly mention these methodologies because other people can use this methodology and basically increase the value of your paper. Okay. For instance, one paper of mine has been cited almost 400, and I published from my work in master. And one of the strong points of this paper is I clearly and nicely explain the technical analytic that I used in this research, like thermal gravimeter analysis, zeta potential measurement, contact angle. That's why this paper has been cited a lot, apart from novelty, right? And then deliver clear and technically correct information. Yes, when you put technical information, you have to give them a reason why you have observed that. If you don't use it, it's gonna be like a laboratory report. So I have seen some papers that they said, okay, we've gone to the lab, run this experiment, and we've got these results. pH goes up as temperature goes down. This is just one example. It didn't happen in reality. And we increase pressure and then temperature. They didn't provided any technical reason and information why they have observed, these trend or these data, these experimental data in the lab. If you don't mention that, unfortunately, this paper can be published, but it's not going to be cited in the future because you haven't done clearly and technically correct information in. And then support your conclusion with solid evidence. Yes, as I told you, we have measured pH and pH goes up after if or as scale inhibitor concentration goes down because of that. This is a solid evidence, and then you can refer to other, researchers, which helps and increase the value of your paper in the future. Okay. Let me go. Oh, sorry. I think I have to go. So you cannot see the new slide, right?
No, we can't, doctor.
You can. Okay.
So we see it. We see it, doctor.
Okay, yeah. What we need to do and what we don't need to in the writing of the good technical paper. Okay. This is very important. Can you see the next slide?
So 6 or 7, we see 6 now.
Okay, this
now
is
we see 8.
8, yes. 7, sorry. You can see 7, right?
Yes.
I don't know why, to be honest, it's like that. It's very weird. So what you can do in the writing of the technique, organize your thoughts, definitely. Without having organization in your thoughts, you can think about in different direction, in different aspects, but you cannot put these brainstormings in the paper. You should have organized and coordinate what you have thought about these experimental or modeling results, and compose simple and short sentences. This is another mistakes that I personally used to make. So, because English is not our first language, it is very difficult to think in the way that British people or American people think. If you want to make sure that the message of the paper is well conveyed to the reviewers, to the editors, or in the big background or big picture for the readers, you should have simple words, not complicated words, and short sentences. For instance, you cannot say, as pH goes up, temperature goes down, and as blah, 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 blah. So if you do these repetitive and long sentences, the readers can get lost in that and doesn't get the key message of this sentence. That's why we have to cut long sentences to short sentences. use common language. I have seen some non-English speaking people, they use the words that even English people cannot use it nowadays. No, just use the common language. For instance, adsorption. Everyone knows that, for instance, the unit of adsorption, it's going to be, for instance, in the case of adsorption of scale inhibitor and the substrate, it will be milligram of the scale inhibitor divided to gram or mass of the substrate. Okay, this is like something that it is well defined for everyone who is working in this particular case. You need proofread, 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 and proofread. After you read it, you need to go back and check if it does make sense or not. Okay? So, in this case, nowadays, you know, AI could be one option. Just write down the sentence, whatever you think about, and then put it in AI, ChatGPT or whatever, and then see how these sentences have been rephrased and learn from that. Don't use it for every single sentence. No, just try to understand how these sentences have been rephrased and read it again and read it again several times, 3 times, 4 times, to make sure that the rephrased sentence makes sense to the original sentence that you put in the AI or in ChatGPT. If they are the same, they have the same meaning, that's okay. If not, you have to use, for instance, at the beginning, ask someone who has a very good English writing skill or English speaking or any native. Nowadays, as far as I remember, some researchers based in the UK and American, you can pay it, unfortunately, but they can edit the papers for you in a way that, you know, this paper in terms of English is not broken. It is good, and it meets the requirements of the journal, peer-reviewed journal. In short, the story is technically consistent. Yes, you cannot, for instance, if pH or temperature goes up, pressures goes down. So you have seen it, you have put it there, but in the explanation, you were saying the other way around. So you have to make sure there is a, whatever you have observed in the lab or whatever you have obtained from the simulation results, it is aligned with your explanation, right? And clearly show the contribution of your paper will make. It means that, okay, you have done this research. You are going to publish this work. What's the implication of this paper? So, for instance, I can give an example. Back to my master time, I have done my research on changing wettability or wetting state of the rock by surfactants. Okay, in the context of enhanced oil recovery in carbonate reservoirs. So my contribution was, I suggested a new mechanistic study of adsorption of surfactant onto the carbonate surface, which can help reservoir engineers or production engineers to design the surfactants, novel surfactants, green surfactants, which can minimize the adsorption of the surfactant on the surface, at the same time maximize the adsorption of the surfactant between oil and water phase. So this is clearly the contribution of my work to the scientific community, particularly who are working in enhanced oil recovery in applied surface chemistry. Okay? Let's go. So I'm going back here. So any questions so far? Okay, all good. So let me. Can you see my slide?
Yes, doctor, we can.
Okay, good. So what you don't, so it will be very bad if you make grammar mistakes or spelling mistakes. When you write the paper and double check with your supervisor, a person that you have paid for edition, don't trust them too much. After you get the final version, go through it and review it again and make sure that it makes sense and there is no misunderstanding. I would suggest you to print off the paper and read it one sentence by one sentence and correct it, and then implement on the Word file before submitting in the journal, and include commercial sales pitches. So don't use it. Just you can use it in our case because we are working in oil and gas industry. At the same time, most of our products, our production chemicals are provided by companies like Baker Hughes, like Schellenberger, SLB. So you can mention just that this scale inhibitor, this surfactant, this polymer have been provided by SNF, by SLB. That's it. Don't go in details, because at the end of the day, this paper is going to be used in science and research community, and people are not very much interested in, okay, this is, for instance, this is, I can give you just one example. Okay, this product has been provided by SLB. This is the, for instance, the functional groups that have been provided by this company here, unless you need it in the interpretation of your data. This is what, this is activity, this, don't go in details that much. Just try to focus. This is the name of chemicals, and this is the provider. That's it. So now I am going to slide number, okay, let me go back and back here. So again, organize your thoughts already, yeah? Review author list, manuscript template, and deadlines. So for any paper, research paper, you have a list of authors, and you have to put the list of authors based on their contribution. For instance, if you have written this paper and if you have done this research, you have to be first author. In the best scenario, you could be corresponding author. Corresponding author is an author that is connected with the journal. When you submit the journal, when you hear back from journal in terms of review comments, when you resubmit the revised version of the manuscript, and when you hear back either rejection or acceptance of your manuscript in the paper, of your paper in the journal. So you have to put, for instance, your name. If you have done research in this research, if you have written this paper, you definitely are first. You are definitely first author. You could be corresponding author, or your PhD or your master supervisor will be your corresponding author, which needs, in this case, if you are not corresponding author, they should be at the end of the list author. For instance, imagine that I have done research, I have written the paper, and my PhD supervisor is Professor Shahab Ayatollahi, and Ali Al-Bihadili has, been like a co-author in this paper. So my first name, my name is first as a first author, written the paper, doing the research. I could be corresponding author. If my supervisor doesn't agree with that, Professor Ayatollahi at the end, which is third, will be corresponding author, and Ali Bihadili will be in the middle of me and Professor Ayatollah as a contributor of this work. You know, writing a paper is like a teamwork, okay? So I would suggest you to determine the contribution share or proportion of each person. For instance, if you are 3 or 4 people, give them their share in or their contribution in the paper. One person goes for writing the result and discussion. One person goes for writing in conclusion. One person goes for extending or writing down introduction. Okay? And after that, you can combine together, merge together, and you can have a good manuscript with a specific contribution from authors and co-authors. Manuscript template, I told you, there is a guideline template for authors. You can download it. It is always in PDF file. Go through it and make sure that your manuscript meets all, requirement done by journals. And deadlines for submitting your manuscript in journals, you don't have deadlines, but for conferences you definitely have deadlines. And try to submit your paper 1 or 2 days before you meet deadline. Don't leave it to the last minute. People, particularly nowadays, are busy and they will easily dismiss your manuscript, and you miss this opportunity to present work in international conferences. And then for the introduction part, you need to have a literature review. Okay. Number 1 or author 1 or researcher A has done this research and they concluded that. Researcher B has done this research and concluded this. And this is their findings. You need to have a literature survey, researcher A, researcher, and then clearly mention at the end, okay, this is the novelty of my work. These authors, these researchers have done extensively research on this topic, but they haven't mentioned the impact of pH, the impact of the brine composition on wettability alteration, and the absorption of scale inhibitor in carbonate rocks. This is a good introduction written. And follow A, B, C role, as I said, attraction, balance, and content. So what is the role? Attraction. So the paper should be jazab or attractive for readers, for reviewers, for editors, by putting very fancy, for instance, figures, particularly abstract figure, and also the figures and tables inside of the body text. You should have a balance between the number of tables and figures with your explanation, with your data interpretation, and the content. So what's the content? Is it about enhanced oil recovery? Is it about transport phenomena? Is it about geochemistry? What's that? You should always have these 3 terms, attraction, balance, and content, to make sure that your paper is good written. So number 10 again. So planning your paper, what lesson have you learned? Okay, in every research, there is a lesson, and what you have learned from this research. So for instance, in my case, I learned that if I use this scale inhibitor, it is good in terms of scale inhibitor retention in the reservoir, but at the same time, if the operational conditions are not well controlled, it makes induced formation damage. This is just simple example for you that I learned from my research. What should the reader understand from your work? Okay, what's the main topic, what's the main message, the key message of this research for reader. For instance, if this reader is from a company like SLB, Schellenberger previously, BP, Shell, okay, if they read this paper, what they understand, what's the implication of this research for them? This is, I would personally prefer to have one part for implication industry of this research at the end of my conclusion before acknowledgement. How does your work differ from similar papers? So what's the difference between, so I told you before, researcher A has done this research and got that. Another research conducted by researcher B, and this is, what's the novelty? What's the difference between these research findings with yours? You have to clearly mention in the introduction part in one paragraph. What useful information did you derive from the literature survey? Okay. For instance, if you look it up for adsorption, you can find a lot of papers about adsorption of, you know, scale inhibitor, gas, or whatever on different surfaces. But which one is completely relevant to your work? You have to find this literature, this paper that you can add into the introduction part. And what's your target audience? Is it engineer? Is it pure researcher? Is it applied researcher? Or is it oil service company or operational company, academic or industry? Okay, so for instance, for industry people, you don't need to go in details that much. They have observed that because of that, that's it. But if you want to write down for academia or for academic people, you have to go in details more than those you write for industry. Yes, pH goes up that because of having this acid in the solution, this acid interacts with water, pH goes down because of, for instance, removing OH minus from the system, something like that. You know, you have to be careful what's the audiences at the end after you publish this paper. Generally speaking, in the case of petroleum engineers or applied chemical engineers, I would personally suggest SPE journal, Society Petroleum Engineer Community journal, for people who are interested in applied research and for people who like that research is seen and is seen mostly or is visible, gets visible in industry community. However, for people who are interested in pure research in academia, I wouldn't suggest SPE journal, although SPE journal is one of the best, in my view, for petroleum engineering studies. I would go for Energy and Fuel, Journal of Petroleum Science and Engineering, Applied Geochemistry, Crystal Growth and Design, Colloid and Surface, you know, etc. Can you see the next slide?
No, doctor, we're still on 10.
Okay.
No, that's 12.
That's, oh, okay, this is, yeah. But we already discussed this one.
That's it.
I think this is repetitive, so I can remove this one, number 10 and number 11, yes. So, remembering your audience, identify your audience and write for them, yes. As I told you, applied researcher, engineers working industry, or academic people. Basic audience needs, okay, for instance, for industry people, they want to have the application of this research. You have to meet them. For academic people, you need, but they don't care about the application. They are more careful and more interested in in your research findings, in a way that, okay, for instance, there is a gap in this part, and by doing this research, by presenting this research data in this paper, you fill this gap. Scientific gaps for them are more important than the final application. So what's the problem? Why did you conduct this research? What's the aim of this research? And what your solution, for industry? And what's the value? Why should the audience listen to you? Okay, I have done research on enhanced oil recovery or wettability alteration by surfactant. What's the value of that? You have to clearly mention in the introduction part. Also, you can clearly mention even in the conclusion. Okay, having this research findings gives the production chemists and reservoir engineers to design the surfactants, the novel surfactants, and deploy the surfactants properly into the reservoir such that the wettability alteration happens from oil wet to water wet, something like that. You should have the value for this research. You cannot repeat, you can repeat other research or other research topics, but at the end of the day, you need novelty. You need a value for your research. I can simplify it to you. It's like interview. If you go to interview and when you present yourself, you can easily say, I have done that. But you need, at the same time, you definitely need that. What you bring to this company or to this research group. There is a saying in English, it says that don't sell yourself short, means always be prepared to have a value for the company or for the research team. Exactly the same in the context of paper writing. Okay? So, let me, before we start this part, I want to go back to the room. So, do you have any question, guys? So, Hammam, can you please read Ali for me the question? Ali, can you hear me?
Yes, doctor, I can.
So Hammam has got a question. So before I start the next part, I would like to have some questions here. Okay.
Yes.
Hammam was asking a question. So could you please read for me, if you wouldn't mind?
Okay. Hammam said, Doctor, I appreciate it if you could list again the chemical engineering journal you referred to earlier.
Sure. I will do that at the end of that, but for the time being, I can tell you, I'm telling based my experience to you. Energy and Fuels from ACS Publisher, INEC, Industrial and Engineering Chemistry, another journal, Colloid and Surface, Colloid and Interface, Chemical Engineering Data, Chemical Engineering Design, Fuel. These journals are very well known and famous in the chemical engineering community. So if you publish in these journals, it will be great. It will be very good. Okay? So great. Thanks, Hammam. Any further question? No? So let's continue then. Can you see basic manuscript?
Yes, sir. Basic
Good. So
manuscript.
the manuscript contains these parts: title, abstract, introduction, theory and definition, which is under the category of methodology, equipment and process, data and result and discussion, conclusion, acknowledgement, and references. Okay, so in every paper, in every research paper, this paper or this manuscript must contain these items: title, عنوان, abstract, شكيدة, introduction, مقدمة, theory and definition, تعريف, equipment and process, تجهيزات, data and result, نتائج, conclusion, نتيجة جيري, acknowledgement, تصديق, and references, منبع. So if one of these parts is missing, you cannot call it manuscript or good paper. So let's go for the abstract. So, and here is my example for you guys. So the abstract. So the abstract, as I told you, it should says the paper objective and scope. Okay, what's the objective of this paper? For instance, I have done research in enhanced oil recovery or wettability alteration by surfactant. What's the objective? The objective is to increase the recovery of oil from carbonate reservoir by changing the wetting state of the rock. Or in my PhD thesis, what's the objective of my research is to compare the retention and the adsorption of scale inhibitor in two different mineralogies, carbonate and dolomite. This is clear objective of this work. Describe method use, as I told you, just very, very briefly. I have used, one important note that came to my mind now. Please use passive verbs or passive sentences in the research paper. So as far as I remember from Arabic language, passive means مجهول, فعل المجهول, جملة المجهول. So you have to use passive. Don't say, I have done this research data. The research has been done at Heriot-Watt University in flow assurance and scale team. Or the static adsorption test had been used or has been used in this lab. Or the zeta potential measurement was used to measure the surface, the interfacial phenomena, or the interfacial, to study the interfacial phenomena between surfactant and the surface of the dolomite. So this is just one brief methodology. Summarize the results. If anionic surfactants was used, the adsorption of, or the wetting, or the contact angle of the droplet of water was less than 50, something like that. If or when the phosphonate scale inhibitor was used, the retention was higher on dolomite compared to calcite. One just sentence on the results, summarized of the results, and state principal conclusions. Here again, when the scale inhibitor of phosphonate scale inhibitor was used, the retention of scale inhibitor on calcite was higher than dolomite because of or due to that higher pH in this case. That's it. Don't use your proposal abstract. No. Don't use this abstract, okay, I have done that. Don't go in details. You don't need to go in details. Here is just a place that people can go through it and understand briefly what you have done. If it is good, because most of people nowadays don't have that time to go through the whole of paper. Just go to abstract and conclusion and see if this paper would be relevant to their research or not. Okay, so that's why abstract and conclusion must be well written, because at the beginning of having a paper, people go to abstract first and then conclusion. So you have to be more careful about writing abstract and conclusion. Here, so it is my, okay, I can tell you. So there is like a test for you, not test, but I would like to have an interactive and engaging part here. So this is the title of my recent manuscript that I submitted in Energy and Field Journals. Before starting abstract, reading abstract, can you please tell me what's the topic about? Geochemical trapping of hydrogen sulfide via iron mineral interaction in carbonate reservoirs. Okay, I'm going out and then let me, Any comment, folks? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can. Can you repeat
Okay.
your question?
So I was saying that this is the title of my paper, Geochemical Trapping of Hydrogen Sulfide through Iron Mineral Interaction in Carbonate Reservoirs. Can you explain very briefly what I am going to talk about in this paper?
It's exactly what you written in the title.
Yes, but elaborate for me, please.
So you are talking about H2S, right?
Yes. So I'm talking about hydrogen sulfide, or H2S. This H2S has been generated somehow in the lab, and I am going to look at the interaction of this hydrogen sulfide with the iron-bearing mineral, like siderate, like hematite in this paper, okay? So it is, the title is very concise. I'm talking about hydrogen sulfide interaction with rock. I'm not talking about hydrogen sulfide interaction with hydrogen sulfide scavengers. I'm not going to talk about hydrogen sulfide interaction with scale inhibitor. I'm not going to talk about hydrogen sulfide with CO2 interaction with the reservoir. Just hydrogen sulfide with iron-bearing minerals. And also, I was saying in carbonate reservoir, I'm not going to talk about sandstone reservoir in this case. So that's why I used the proper words to have a concise title. You remember I was telling that the title must be concise, okay? Hydrogen sulfide interaction in carbonates, not hydrogen sulfide interaction with iron-bearing minerals in sandstone. Not talking about hydrogen sulfide interaction or hydrogen sulfide interaction with hydrogen scale inhibitors or with any other, materials. Just about the reservoir rock. It's about rock fluid interaction. Does it make sense to you guys?
Yes, doctor. So it's exactly what you wrote in the title.
Yes. So the title is concise. I can write down something else, okay? Hydrogen sulfide. Let me give you an example. I could use it. This is exactly categorize this research in this subcategory, hydrogen sulfide mineralization. But for most of people, okay, hydrogen mineralization, how hydrogen sulfide will be mineralized? Hydrogen sulfide is a gas. How can it be mineralized as a solid phase? No. I could use it, but for most of people who are not working in this research area, it would be confusing. You know what I mean? So geochemistry interaction between hydrogen sulfide with the reservoir rock through the iron-bearing minerals. Very clear. And then I put it experimental and modeling study. I could remove it. I couldn't have this part, but I put it for attraction. Wow, this work doesn't have just experimental study. It has experimental and modeling. Okay, I hope it makes sense. So I wanted to, to interpret the title based on what I have already shared with you. Does it make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Yes, doctor. I think it did.
Good, good. Let's go back to the slide. Okay, here. Abstract. I can read very quickly. Hydrogen sulfide capture and long-term retention in subsurface is a critical area of research, particularly for enhancing feed development strategies aimed at safe and permanent disposal. Okay, this is the problem. Okay, hydrogen sulfide. Sorry, this is challenge. We need to capture hydrogen sulfide for a long time because it helps us to have a safe and permanent disposal of hydrogen sulfide through the field development. One key objective. So see, here I clearly mentioned the objective, the most important part of my research. So one key objective of current hydrogen sulfide programs is to evaluate the geochemical interaction between hydrogen sulfide and iron-bearing minerals in carbonate formation, with focus on the potential for permanent mineralization of hydrogen sulfide under reservoir condition. So this is exactly what I am going to talk about in this paper. The present study addresses this objective by both static geochemical model and a series of laboratory scale dynamic experiments. So here, just a second. Hello, Dada. Hello. ببخش دادا أمن لجلسام باشا سلام شوني ببخش أمن لجلسام لإيران تواب مزنقد بوليدم باشا ببخش قربانت خدا حافظ. I'm so sorry, guys. So here, as I told you at the beginning, I put the challenge and then the objective I work and then what I have done in this work. And here I am not going in details. This is the experimental and modeling results. I didn't go in detail, just I did that, and we observed that. And here, this is very important. The conclusion part. Overall, scavenging efficiency was limited by restricted accessibility of iron to injected hydrogen sulfide. However, this study suggests that the approach could be viable in oilfield application, provided that sufficient reactive iron is naturally present in the reservoir minerals, or supplemented through injection of iron-bearing solution into the production wells. So here, I have concluded that the efficiency of this method is low, but it can be important for the reservoir because we use the nature or natural source of hydrogen sulfide scavenging by iron minerals, which is already there in the reservoir, and also injecting of iron solution into the solution, into the reservoir. Okay? So any question from this part, guys? Please let me know.
So, Doctor, what is the main difference between conclusion part and abstract? Could we say that the abstract contain little bit of this conclusion?
That's completely true, yes. So for me, when I was preparing myself for IELTS, we had the same thing, just one paragraph as a like introduction, and then the main context, and then conclusion. And the conclusion actually is a kind of abstract, but I would personally want to extend a little bit. For instance, here, I didn't go in details in terms of the data interpretation, but in conclusion, you can rephrase the abstract in a way that you can add some data interpretation there. Okay, does it make sense to you, Ali?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Good question.
So the abstract, first we have to say the issue in small sentences, and then what we have done.
Yes.
And then
what's the objective of this research?
Okay,
yes.
And then small part of the conclusion.
Yeah, and then so as you told you, the challenge, key objective, what you have observed in the lab. Don't go in details in terms of data data interpretation, what you have observed, this trend in the lab, what you haven't observed, and then at the end, the implication of your research, just in one sentence. As I mentioned to you and showed to you here, at the end, I said the overall scavenging efficiency in this method is low, but it could be vital for oil field application because hydrate is already there, and hydrogen sulfide can be captured by hydrate in the reservoir, in the subsurface reservoir. So this is just one need, and one, it could be, by the way, it could be shorter, but personally, I'm a person that like details. That's why I have extended to that one, but it could be shorter and go to the point and more concise. Okay, Ali? Any question?
Okay.
There is some noise around me. That's why I am Hammam. I hear something. Is there any noise in my background?
No.
No, in his background. He want to ask you a question,
okay.
Doctor.
Ah,
So can I read it to you?
yes.
Yeah. My question is, in your abstract, Doctor, you referred to hydrogen sulfide using its chemical formula H2S. Would it be acceptable or perhaps more appropriate to write it out as hydrogen sulfide instead?
So doesn't matter. But personally, I put first full name, hydrogen sulfide, and then put the chemical formula in. For the rest of the paper, either in the abstract, in the introduction, in the conclusion, I use hydrogen sulfide as a chemical formula. I don't need to write down again hydrogen sulfide in bracket hydrogen sulfide, or the same thing. Or you could use hydrogen sulfide as letters, not in chemical formula. But because this is a research paper, I would prefer to have hydrogen sulfide as a chemical formula for the rest of paper.
Doctor, the abstract is the last thing we wrote, right?
Yes, that's correct. Because it is a summary of what you have written. if you don't write down the, for instance, methodology, resultant, discussion, and conclusion, how you can write down abstract. Abstract is a summary, is a brief of what you have written. So yes, this is a good order of having writing a good paper. Resultant discussion, methodology, resultant discussion, and then conclusion, and go back and write down the abstract. Yes, Balan Osman.
کاک دکتۆر پرسیاری منەوەیە چۆن بتوانین سوود لە زیرەکی دەستکرد وەربگرین بەبێ ئەوەی تووشی تەمەڵی بین لە نووسینە ئەکادیمی و تەکنیکەکانمان.
ببوورە دەکردرێ پرسیارەکەت دووبارە دووپاتکایەوە برای من.
پێم و گوتیت کە چۆن ئەکرێت سوود لە زیرەکی دەستکرد ببینین بەبێ ئەوەی کە تووشی ئەو تەمەڵیە تووشی تەمەڵی بین لە نووسینە تەکنیکی و ئەکادیەکانمان.
بێ زەحمەت ئەمن بە قەولێک تەسیح بکەن ئەگەر ئیشتبا متەوەجی بووم، دەفەرمن چ کارێک بکەن پێش وەی کە تەمەڵی نووسینتان هەبێ، بە قەولێک شتەکەتان هەبێ کە ئەو ڕغبەتتان هەبێ، ئەو ئینکارێجمنتتان هەبێ کە بڕۆن و مەقالەکە بنووسن. دروستە؟
بەڵێ کاک دکتۆر دروستە.
زۆر باشە. ئەگەر ئەم بە ئینگلیسی جواب بدە وەڵام بدەمەوە یا بە کوردی؟
بە ئینگلیزی ئاساییە کاک دکتۆر.
So Balan was asking me how we can have a way or a method or a procedure to write down a paper such that we don't postpone it to the future. So in other words, he was asking what's the practical method to write down the paper whenever the results are provided before postponing to the future. Some people, it is kind of human beings. So everyone wants to do whatever is on them in terms of task, responsibility to postpone it to tomorrow. But I would personally, this is my idea, when I go to the lab, run the experiment, get the results, 1 week for running the simulation, running the experiment, and get the results. 1 week or 2 weeks. And I allocate 1 week specifically for data interpretation. When I have a data interpretation, I can go and double check with my PhD supervisor, with my master supervisor, or with my industry supervisor, whoever is senior or above you, okay? And after that, when you double check, your data interpretation is okay, and it does make sense to them as well. As soon as I get confirmation from my supervisor, I put in the slides, okay, and go and write down, okay, before postponing to the future, because we are all human beings and we can forget whatever is in our mind. But whatever comes to your mind in terms of data interpretation, go and write down somewhere, either on your slides, or if you have a notebook, write down on your notebook, get confirmation from your supervisor or from your senior manager or whoever, and then go and write down. This is what always follow in my life, in my academic and in my professional life. And to be honest with you, it has helped me a lot so far. برايمن وڵامەکە شت بوو، شەفاف بوو؟
واضحە کاک دکتۆر، دەستەکانت خۆش.
خواهش دەکەم. Let's go back to the slides.
Sorry, Doctor, for interrupting you. We would like to inform that if you have any question, you may ask it in English for public interest. I'm sorry for that.
Sure. Okay, can you see the introduction? So, introduction, describe the author's contribution. First, for instance, personally, this is the format of some SPE journals. But I would personally put one part before acknowledgement as a contribution. Khosrow first uttered and written the manuscript. Ali, for instance, data interpretation. Professor Shahab Ayatullahi reviewing the paper and corresponding author. So nowadays it is very common to have the author contribution at the end of conclusion before reaching out the acknowledgement. But in some journal, people like to have the contribution into introduction. But I would personally to leave it to the end of paper. Clearly present the nature and the scope of the problem investigated. Yes, what's the problem and why we have got this problem? What's the reason behind of this challenge that we are facing in oil and gas industry, for instance? And what other researchers have done? Review relevant and enough literature. Researcher 1A done that, researcher B done that, researcher B. And then what's the novelty of my work? Or the method of investigation and your justification, which is basically novelty of my work. Okay? Let's review it. Problem, the source of problem, the method that they are using, other researcher work, and then clearly mention my novelty or the aim of this research or this paper. Okay? So here, introduction of my work. So see, introduction. This introduction belongs to the previous abstract. So let's see the first paragraph. A significant challenge in many hydrocarbon reservoirs in the presence of hydrogen sulfide, a toxic and corrosive gas produced through both biological and chemical process within the subsurface formations. Biologically, sulfate-reducing bacteria metabolize sulfate ions to generate hydrogen sulfide. Chemically, thermochemical sulfate reduction, TSR, is another major contributor accounting for majority of sulfide hydrogen in petroleum systems. Here I have mentioned the source of hydrogen sulfide generated in situ in the reservoir. TSR, so see, I already used TSR. I don't need to repeat thermochemical sulfate reduction. When I use TSR and already defined it at the beginning, it means that it is okay. So it makes sense to the reader. Also produce other bioproducts, like including carbon dioxide, carbonate minerals, and heavy organosulfur compounds. Additionally, thermal composition of organosulfur compounds and other sulfur-containing species in heavy crude oils can release further amount of hydrogen sulfide. This is the generation of hydrogen sulfide. In offshore reservoirs, pressure maintenance is commonly achieved, blah, 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 blah. I have mentioned here something here. In addition, in the context of, and now here I mentioned clearly the problem, hydrogen sulfide generation. And here, this is, I brought this paragraph to increase the attraction and brought the application of this paper to novel research in oil and gas or in energy sector, like underground hydrogen storage or CO2 storage. In addition, with the context of ground hydrogen storage, depleted hydrocarbon reservoirs are considered particularly suitable due to the prone seal integrity, well characterized geology and existing blah, blah, blah. However, a critical challenge in underground hydrogen storage is the potential contamination of stored hydrogen with hydrogen sulfide primarily resulting from microbial activity. Okay. Here, I have mentioned a little bit about the interaction of hydrogen sulfide with iron-bearing minerals. Okay, So now, as a brief, I have mentioned hydrogen sulfide as a big problem, generation of hydrogen sulfide by thermochemical reduction, by sulfide-reducing bacteria, and then why hydrogen sulfide is generated in water-flooded reservoir in offshore case, and why hydrogen sulfide is critical and needs to be minimized in underground hydrogen storage. So this is the problems that we are facing, and this is the solutions. Or the hydrogen sulfide can interact geochemically with clays, with iron carbonate in the system. Okay. Let me sorry. I haven't brought the introduction part, unfortunately, because I didn't have space. But after that, I put, okay, hydrogen sulfide treatment, how we can remove hydrogen sulfide by chemicals or by this method I was offering, geochemical trapping. And this is the main part of my research. And here, again, I didn't bring, unfortunately, the literature survey part. Researcher A done that, they found this result. Researcher B conducted this research and they found these, results. And what's the novelty of my work? This is the introduction part, okay? So if you have any question, guys, I'm happy to take your questions in this stage. Hello?
So the introduction.
Yes, Doctor.
Yes.
Sorry,
I think there's no question.
Okay, Ali, could I ask?
Yep, go ahead, Ali. Go ahead. Sorry for that.
Go
Okay.
ahead, brother.
So, Doctor, so introduction must contain it must contain a historical background or mustn't?
What do you mean historical part? Do you mean literature survey or not?
Yeah, I mean, some previous.
Yes, you definitely need to include literature survey in introduction. Otherwise, other people don't understand what other researchers have conducted in this context and what's the difference between other research already done with your current research that you are presenting in this paper. You definitely need to have a good literature review. Other than that, I have come across this issue. Wrote introduction, problem, and then go directly to novelty with a little bit, probably 2 or 3 literature review. And they said the literature review is not enough. Please bring more literature review. Please bring more research that have been done by other people, other researchers, because it increased the value of your paper. It means that you have already looked up for the other research. They know what they found and what's your novelty here. Okay, otherwise, okay, there is no connection between the novelty part with the literature survey. You have to make sure that, okay, for instance, in this context, I can tell you, hydrogen sulfide interaction with sandstone done, and this is the results. Hydrogen sulfide interaction with clays being done. But the novelty of my work, or the aim of this work, because they hadn't included carbonate formations in their research, I have done my research on the geochemical interaction between iron-bearing minerals in carbonate reservoirs.
I see.
Okay, does it make sense to you, Ali?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay,
Should it also be short, or I can put lots of information in the introduction part, or it depends on the project that I'm working on?
So do you mean that the introduction should be shorter?
I'm asking if it must be short, or I can
Personally, I would prefer to have introduction in one complete page, A4, with 1.5 page, not longer than that.
Okay.
Not longer than that. Yeah. Of course, depending on the type of, paper. Is it mini review paper? Is it original research paper? Is it even spatial issue? In the spatial issue, sometimes you have an introduction like that. But here, this is an original paper, original research article or paper. That's why I have, put it in this way.
Yeah, clear.
Okay. Yeah, good. Let's go back. I need to go to speed up a little bit. So the materials and method, theoretical papers, and experimental and case-done papers. For the theoretical papers, the hypothesis, what's the falvia is, what's the hypothesis of this research assumption. This part can be completely and exactly applied in the modeling part. Theoretical development and arguments to demonstrate applicability. And what's the application of this theoretical part? For instance, I have modeled this geochemical interaction. What will be the end application of that? I have to clearly mention in the materials and methods, or if I have a separate modeling part, I have to put it there. Experimental, which materials you have used, which techniques that you have used, and as I told you, describe apparatus, equipment, procedure, purpose of experiments and case studies, present data and observation, and inferences. Personally, I don't put present data and observations. I put the experimental methodology, the materials, and the procedure of experiments. This is what I always put the experimental part. So here, let me go back. Oh, sorry. This is materials. Okay. Here, as you can see, I have put experimental methodology, dynamic pack flooding test. I have put what dynamic pack with an image. This is a simplified schematic of the experiment that I used. Okay. This is what I have explained. I am not going in details. I'm not going to read it, but you can, when the paper is published, I will be happy to share with you and just to get an idea. And this is the experimental, methodology that already approved by people. That's why I referenced here, Here is the modeling part. Description and explanation of sulfide, hydrogen sulfide, carbonate system. We've got hydrogen sulfide in gas phase, in water phase, and this is the rock, calcium carbonate, iron carbonate, and iron sulfide. And this is the dissociation of two gases, CO2 and hydrogen sulfide, between gas and water. I'm not going in details, but as you can see, I have put a schematic, simplified schematic of the model, and this is the chemical interaction. Okay. So any questions so far, folks? No? Okay, let's continue then. And here I have put result and discussion. So see, I have put this figure, and this is the explanation here. So I could extend this part, but I intentionally didn't, because I wanted to remain some part of these results unclear for reviewer, because I am sure that the reviewers, when the paper is reviewed by reviewers, they ask me the question about that, and then I can add it here. Okay, and this is the experiment, and I explained it here. So there is one point that I wanted to emphasize here. You need to have a balance between the number of figures with the amount or the extent part of your data interpretation. You don't, for instance, I have seen in some paper, they can put one figure, and they can put something like that 3, 4, 5 paragraph as an explanation. And this figure, if you could simplify in one sentence, that would be enough, but they have put it. So in this case, there is no balance between the data interpretation with the figure, or in the other way around. So you can put just one figure, and the explanation or the result, the data interpretation is very short. Here is also not good for the result and discussion. You have to make sure not go in details that much. At the same time, mention the key message of this figure. For instance, in this figure, I can tell you, okay, at the beginning, at the first round of flooding system with 1% NA, because there is a high driving force between the substrate and the injected fluid, we have got a lot of calcium, but the system reaches to an equilibrium. This is what exactly observed in the second and the third round of flooding. So, and here the system reaches a plateau, which confirms that the system is in equilibrium in this region. That's it. Okay? And if they ask me questions, I could explain to them. Okay? Any question? Okay.
Yes, sir, I have. Can I ask?
Sure, Ali. Go ahead.
For the charts or graphics, like the numbers, shall I put it only in the results and discussion, or can I put it anywhere?
What do you mean? Can you please elaborate your question?
So like in scientific stuff, like we have laboratory researchers or laboratory, how can I say it?
Laboratory part, yes.
Yes. So shall I put the charts or the numbers or equations in the results only, or shall I put like in the introduction and the other stuff also?
I would suggest you to put in result and discussion, unless there is a general chemical interaction. For instance, hydrogen sulfide plus iron carbonate, it gives you iron sulfide plus acid carbonic. This is a general, equation. You could put, if you want to explain about this in this part, in the introduction, you can put it there. But if there is a new equation or there is a new, modeling result, you have to bring it into the result and discussion. You have to show the reviewers and editor this model, this chemical equation or whatever, done by yourself, not by others. Okay?
Thank you, Doctor.
You're very welcome. So let's go back to this part. The table and figures demonstrate visual presentation of key findings. As I mentioned to you here, the rate of, the calcium generation by rock dissolution in 3 stages of flooding. Don't turn results of simple calculation into figures rather than graphs. Some people like to put this kind of results that I showed you in a figure in table. It doesn't give that impression to the reviewers and to the readers and to the reviewers as well. That okay, but if you put it in the figure, it shows that this is from this part to this part. This is the calcium generation in situ concentration. In this part, this is the concentration of calcium generated in situ. So don't change the for instance, or don't use figure on behalf of table or the other way around. They have to be used in their appropriate places. So here, again, I have to go up, go out. So here, again, from my paper, this is one figure. I merged actually this one to A and B. And this is calcium generated in situ because hydrogen sulfide has interacted with calcium carbonate and calcium generated in situ. And in the case of hydrogen sulfide, because in this case, we haven't got iron carbonate, hydrogen sulfide goes up to the initial concentration, but we have a retardation of hydrogen sulfide in the system. And I mentioned here as well. And here I took 2 photos before treatment with hydrogen sulfide, exposure to hydrogen sulfide, and after hydrogen sulfide. And it is clearly tell you that the color of the system has changed. And here, this is a scanning electron microscopy of the pack before and after. And this is the elemental analysis. Okay, I haven't brought the explanation for these parts. But like this one, okay, this is tables, this is, figures. Figures are visually clear. For instance, here, hydrogen sulfide concentration versus pore volume injection. The same to here, calcium concentration versus pore volume. This is the change of color before and after hydrogen sulfide exposure. And this is the morphology of the calcium carbonate before and after exposure to hydrogen sulfide. Okay, so everything is clear here. Okay, any question in this part, folks? No? Okay. Hi, Afnan. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Hi, Doctor. I have a question is there a difference in writing research paper for scientific conference compared to a scientific journal?
You were saying that can you present your work in scientific conference and then publish in scientific journal?
Yes. Is there a difference between?
So yes, generally, the value and prestige of peer-reviewed journal papers are higher than scientific, even SPE, for instance, conferences. But how I can present my work in conference at the same time, use these materials that I already presented into the peer-reviewed journals. This is my suggestion to you. Don't go to details and don't waste your materials, either generated in the lab or generated by software or coding or whatever, into the conference. Just give them a small, part and then present it. Because, believe it or not, honestly, conference is a holiday for academic people. They go there and they listen to your work, but not that much. They want to enjoy and they want to make connection for themselves. But leave the key part and most important part to the journal. This is very, very important. This is what I always do. I don't go for higher and like a very outstanding result for conference. I don't waste it in conferences. Go for some results that I have generated, and then go for journal with outstanding findings, with interesting findings that I can catch more people. And at the same time, as I told you, the prestige of journal paper is higher than conference. Okay, so let's go back.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Afnan. To starting your paper. As I told you, begin with conclusion, describe how you got the results, describe the process, and present the theory that explains, okay? Write simple sentences, Don't use long sentences, common terminology, common language. Don't advertise your company, or, I have seen some papers that even published in the peer review journal, but they have got a result, and they clearly mention, okay, our company has done that, nobody already done that. They are advertising and tabligh for their company in the paper. Paper is not for that. Paper is for sharing knowledge, for sharing novelty or novel works. Okay, it's not about advertisement or about, particularly if you have a company and the work has been done in the company. And also, if English is not your first language, ask a native and fluent speaker to read your paper and make suggestion. Already explained to you. In my case, I never forget when I wrote my first paper, journal paper. I was with one of my friends. We wrote the paper and then exchanged our parts, read together, got some edits, and when we make sure that the comments make sense, we implement it and then share with our supervisor. Our supervisor read it, got back to us with some feedbacks. Again, double check with the feedbacks. When they made sense, we implemented. And then at the end, we sent out to a native speaker. And he did a very good and final English in terms of grammar, in terms of spelling, in terms of context for us. Ensure that you balance the clarity and technical content. Exactly. So don't go in details, but at the same time, don't write down your paper as a laboratory report. Put the results, explain the results. Some part, if you like, you can write down in a short sentences. Some part, if you don't want to share it, just intentionally leave it, as I told you. So the reviewers come back to you with more questions. That definitely in this part you can add this part, these details, and then it shines and polish your paper much better than before. Okay? A note of plagiarism. Plagiarism is very important. Unfortunately, nowadays, some people are doing that unprofessionally. So they copy and paste from other research work and put in their works without referencing. So journals, they have their own system, they have their own machine that can detect plagiarism. And if it is about 50, for instance, percentage or 40%, depending on the journal criteria, they get back to you and they say, oh, there is a plagiarism. Please rewrite your paper. If they are very strict on you, they will put you in your blacklist. So don't take risk. Please read the papers, for instance, particularly in the introduction part, because you need to read other papers. Whatever you understand, write down and then rephrase it until it makes sense and put it there with putting reference. From which journal, from which thesis you have used this sentence. Don't leave it without referencing. You definitely need to cite the paper, other works as well. And perhaps in a style constant with the rest of your work. Okay, paraphrase, sorry. So in this case, as I told you, when you understand, you can paraphrase and put within your words in the paper. Don't copy and paste. This is plagiarism and it is illegal. Okay? So support your argument with your references. Always keep your audiences in the mind. Okay, who is going to read my paper? petroleum engineers, chemical engineers, biologists, chemists try to tailor the paper based on audiences. For instance, if your audiences are or rather are chemical engineers, don't go into, for instance, mechanical engineering or petroleum engineering or reservoir modeling. You have to know which journal are you going present, submit, and who are going to be your readers, your audiences. If you are chemical engineer, done work in petroleum engineer, you must have a good understanding of fundamental of petroleum engineering. So, and then try to use the petroleum engineering language and the other way around. Read your paper aloud. I already talked to you, to yourself, to make sure that it sounds smooth and consistent. In my case, I read my paper 4 times until I ensure that it makes sense and there is a flow and consistency inside. Constantly ask yourself if you can improve your paper's readability. Yes. For instance, if you write down a sentence and you repeat it and speak loudly and make sure that it makes sense, again, think about the words. Can I use this word here? If I use this word, does it make a big chance or not? Something like that. Just a second, sorry. And then, let's see, they are written here. And then when you make sure that there is a way for improvement in terms of using synonyms or the word that it would be better in this context, use it. At the end, this paper will be edited by your supervisor who has more experience than you in terms of publishing paper, as well as a native or local or a person who can speak and write English fluently. Okay, this is my presentation for today. Thanks very much for your attention. Thanks for Hassan, to Hassan for approaching me on LinkedIn and inviting me and giving me this opportunity to present my work to you. And I am happy to take your question at the end. Okay?
Doctor, you mentioned that after we finish the paper, we should give it to native speaker for grammar or
Yes.
yeah, something. So could we use here the AI as a checker?
To be honest with you, for rephrasing or for kind of things, you can use it, but don't trust AI too much. I have a friend, he has a colleague, he is not based in the UK, he's based in Malaysia. So he asked him to write down an introduction. And they used AI and put a lot of nonsense references, okay? In this case, you cannot use AI because the AI doesn't do cross-checking for the references. However, when you can use AI, after you get the result, again, read it and see how much this rephrased version by AI is close to your sentence. Does it make sense or does it not? In this case, yes, absolutely, you can use AI, but don't use AI as a generation of something, because as I told you, they don't do cross-checking reference.
Yeah, I see. I don't use it to create, but for just grammar checking.
Yeah, for grammar checking, you can use it. There is one grammar app, grammar
Coil
check.
book, like this.
There was an American one, but I forgot, unfortunately, the name. But in my case, because my PhD supervisor was originally from UK, so I didn't need to be worried about English, because
Oh yeah.
he always checked the English and grammar and spelling and those things. But for rephrasing and you can use it, but not for generating. Yes. Yes, Jannat.
Hi, Doctor.
Hi.
Doctor, I have asked if you said to edit only one figure, no more, right? So if I have more than one figure, how should I choose between them?
What do you mean? You have one figure and choose one of them. I didn't understand. I didn't get your point, Jannat. Could you please elaborate for me?
Doctor, you said added in this paper one figure, right? Figure explain شلون نقولها properties or anything or مقارنات عندي ما أعرف يعني ليش ما جاي تفهمني فإذا
And not say it in Arabic, and I will translate to him.
إيه صح اشرح له يعني أنا إذا عندي أكثر من فيجر بالورقة يعني بالبحث مالتي وإجيت
يعني شلون
أختار
جرافيك وورقة بيانية؟
لا بالبحث مالي الأصلي عندي أكثر من فيجر يعني
وشنو
يشرح
الفيجر
لي
بالضبط؟
علاقة بين يشرح لي فد علاقة بين مثلا بريتن نمبر جراشوف نمبر أو هيك يعني أرقام أو خصائص شلون هذني راح يزدادن من هذا يرتفع شلون يعني هيك.
Okay. So like أرقام بيانية.
Yes.
Okay. So she said like that she puts more than one charts that explain the relationship between the other stuff, like numbers, properties.
I was, as far as I understood, Ali, thanks for your explanation and translating from Arabic to English. So I was saying, if you can put your results in the figure such that there is a trend. For instance, in my figures, you can clearly notice that there is a trend. Calcium goes up and then goes down until the system reaches a plateau. Don't use table or chart for this case, because it will be difficult for readers, for reviewers, for editors to digest it and to understand it. In this case, use the figure such that the figure can clearly show to you the trend, the range of the calcium generated in situ in this context, or hydrogen sulfide generated in the system. This is what I personally do that, and I think it makes sense, because if you put in the table or if you put it in the chart, people cannot understand clearly what's going on. We need to have a trend. And for experimental results, I don't use table unless the chart is not, or the figure is not clear. For instance, in the edX, in that one that I put it under the SEM images, I use tables because the figures weren't clear. I got the result from Excel sheet and put it in the table and presented in the paper. Okay. Did I answer your question, Jannah?
I think yes, doctor.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Does anyone have any question left, guys? So can I go? Can I ask you a question, sir?
Yes, yes. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, doctor, with the references, shall I use like the reliable one? That's
Of course.
how
That's
can I
why
say
I
it
was.
doesn't support my theory. But there is a one that supports my theory. Shall I use it or shall I use the reliable
So,
one?
you know, whatever supports your claim, you can use it. But as mentioned in my presentation, use journal papers, PhD thesis, master thesis. Don't use, for instance, in Schellenberger website, you can find a lot of information about their chemicals. Why, for instance, these drilling fluids act like that or behave like that. Don't use, you know, those things. But for instance, in my case, as I showed to you, for instance, I said hydrogen sulfide is generated by microbial activity through the reduction of sulfate by sulfate reducing bacteria, SRB2 sulfide. Okay, in this case, I have put journal papers for my claim. Okay, because at the end, the reviewers needs to see, okay, if it is new or already or other people already seen that. Because, you know, if you can see one phenomenon, I can see the same thing. Ali, Muhammad, whoever seen that. Because the number of people have seen that, majority of people have seen this trend, it's a good proof for your claim. If you use these, you know, references in your paper.
Thank you for that, sir. Does anyone have any question left for Dr. Khosrow? And I think not. We sincerely thank you, Doctor, for sharing this valuable knowledge and experience with us today. Your insight and guidance have been truly inspiring for all of us. And I think Hussein Hisham have a question for you.
Yes, Hussein, go ahead.
Sorry,
please.
Doctor.
No worries.
Sorry, how are you, Doctor?
I'm all right. Thanks very much for attending the meeting.
Thank you very much. Can we use the artificial intelligence to help us to do our research, such a grammar, steps for research?
So I couldn't hear you properly. Can you please speak a little bit loudly?
Yeah. So, Doctor, can we use the artificial intelligence to help us to do our search, such a grammar steps for our research?
So do you mean that, do you need to mention something in acknowledgement, or Ali, if you
can we use the AI to help us?
To help us in what?
Such grammar steps for.
Yeah. So this question was already asked by Ali, not this Ali, the other one. Unfortunately, I forgot his second name, his last name. Sorry. So you can only use AI when you rephrase and when you write your sentence and you want to rephrase it. Yes. Don't use it to generate something for you, right? Because AI is machine. It's like a baby. So baby will be trained by their parents, and you need to train AI, right? So for instance, I go to the school. So I put this one in the AI and ask, could you please rephrase this sentence in a scientific way? Right? Okay. And then whatever comes to me from AI, I'll go and double check and see, is it exactly what I meant or not? You have to always double check. Don't use AI for referencing. Don't use AI for data interpretation. Don't use AI for generating, research or something like that. No. Just for me, AI is a good tool for rephrasing, for checking the English or something like that.
Okay, Doctor. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
You're very
Okay,
welcome.
thank you very much, Doctor.
Thanks to you, Hussein, for attending the meeting. And again, thanks very much for you guys. I know that it is late in Iraq. Thanks for keeping awake and attending the meeting. Very much appreciated. And I hope this presentation helped you in terms of writing your research and converting your research into the research paper and technical reports. If
Thank
you
you,
don't
sir.
have any
Thank you,
question, I can say goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks very
Thank you,
much.
sir.
مع
Thank you,
السلامة.
Doctor, for this amazing lecture. Thank you.
You're
Thank you
very
so much.
welcome. You're very welcome. مع السلامة. في أمان الله.
And guys, we want to note that we share the link for the certificate. You want to go on ahead and
So
vote.
I already talked to Hassan that I'm not going to provide certificate. Right? Ali, are you with me? Hello?
No, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
So, yeah, I already told Hassan I'm not going to provide certificate or something like that, unfortunately, at this stage. But in the future, inshallah, I will give a certificate to the audiences. Okay?
No, sir. Actually, the certificate that will be provided from us, from the IKIS chapter.
Okay. Are you going to provide the certificate to me?
Yes. Also, we'll give it to you, and we'll give it to the audience.
Brilliant. That will be very, very good. Thanks very much. Very much. Please send it by email or something like that. I think Hassan has
Yes,
my
we'll send it by email, Doctor. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks very much, brother. مع السلامة.
Welcome, sir.
مساء الخير. إن شاء الله خير.